So you have a box of chocolates in front of you, your favorites, and you pick one out and you say, I'm only going to have one because I'm doing sugar in moderation. Said no woman I know ever. Hi, everybody. I'm Ricki Heller from rickiheller.com. And I help women on restricted diets learn to love their food again so that they can lose their symptoms, let their bodies heal, and get back to living their best lives. And I wanted to talk about this today because I really think this is so important that we um, acknowledge that for so many of us, this idea of moderation is just not possible at the moment. So, actually, I'm going to retract what I just said because I do know of one person in my entire life, one woman who actually could eat sugar in moderation. And that's what made me think about this and how this is such an issue for so many people. So, when I was back teaching at the college level, I had a colleague and a friend who was beautiful. She was like model-like beautiful, one of these women that you just love to hate, but you can't because she's so nice. So you actually love her anyway. And one day I was talking about my struggles with losing weight. This was back in my 30s and just eating at the time, struggles with eating food that I knew I shouldn't be eating, most of it sugar laden. And she said, what you need to do, Ricki, is go out and buy yourself one really high quality truffle, like a Godiva truffle or something like that. And then just savor it and eat it. And you will not want other chocolates after that. And I remember literally rolling my eyes and thinking, she has no clue. And in fact, she had no clue because she was not a sugar addict. So, is it possible for someone who is addicted to sugar, and by that I mean someone who feels compelled to eat sugar, someone who has overwhelming sugar cravings? Maybe you're dealing with candida overgrowth. Maybe you're not even dealing with a specific health issue, but you're just someone who is drawn to sugar and you want to cut it out of your life. Is it possible to go from that to moderation, or do you need to cut it out altogether? And what I want to say to you is yes and yes. So, in my experience, and this is why I've actually altered the way I work with my clients, in my experience, there are three areas that you need to address before you can move on from those sugar cravings. And I've talked about those in a different video. But if you are not going to address all three of them, the three different levels of sugar cravings, then it doesn't matter what you do in terms of trying to be moderate, it won't work. So if I think of my experience, in the old days, I remember I just couldn't have anything with sugar in the house because I knew I was just going to consume it until it was finished. Before I knew it, if I had that box of chocolates in front of me, the whole thing was gone. And that's a compulsive kind of eating that's related to many different factors. So, what do you do if you want to get to that point of moderation where you are able to maybe have one or two things a week with sugar, or just eat like what we call a normal person? Like my friend Liz that I just mentioned, she could eat one truffle and be happy. How do you go from rummaging through the drawers to get something that you forgot was there because you're dying for something with sugar in it in the middle of the afternoon? How do you go from that to this moderate kind of eating? Well, like I said, it's a three-step process, but you start with the first step. And so if I had tried to be moderate in my eating at the beginning, before I'd gone through those three stages, I would have just eaten everything in the house. And so what I did and what I advise my clients to do is, while you're working on your habits and your emotions, because those have to be addressed if you ever want to get to the point where food doesn't rule your life, while you're working on those, what you don't want is to still be binging on sugar and still be eating way more sugar than you'd like. So when you find alternatives that taste as good, even if you haven't mastered the binge, you can still eat those knowing that you're not harming your health in the long run. So in my case, in the beginning of my candida journey, I was still having sugar cravings for a really long time. And if I had simply said, I'm going to be moderate, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So what I did instead was I made sweet treats that I knew were candida friendly. So they were made with alternative healthful sweeteners like stevia, sugar alcohols like erythritol, xylitol, cone syrup, monk fruit. And I had them in the house. And even if I ended up overdoing it, at least I knew I wasn't feeding my candida, I wasn't raising my blood sugar, I wasn't ultimately making myself sicker down the road. And then what happens is kind of miraculous over time, because these days, and I don't eat sugar just because I decided I'm never going to eat sugar again. There's no reason for me to eat sugar. I definitely don't want to go back to where I was in the beginning, and I don't miss it at this point. But the fact is, even with the sweet treats, I just don't feel the need to do that anymore. Whereas I might have eaten half a pound of brownies in one sitting for breakfast in the beginning of my candida journey. These days, I'll have a brownie after dinner for dessert, or I'll have it for a snack, and I'm good. And that's not to say I don't still have the occasions where I feel that craving and I want to eat those sweet treats. But at this point, it's so much easier to just deal with them and not eat the food. And that's because I've worked on those other two levels. So, what I would advise is starting out with the sweet treats and not worrying about, and this is what worked for me. I'm not a doctor, so clearly you want to check with your doctor before you do this. But I didn't worry about my quantities in the beginning. I was much more concerned with having a stabilized blood sugar and then working on the part that goes on up here, changing my habits, changing my emotions. And all those three in sequence are what allowed me to change the way I eat completely from the way I used to eat back in my 30s when I rolled my eyes at what my friend was saying about the chocolate truffle. Now I can have just one chocolate truffle. The difference is it's homemade chocolate truffle that I've made. So I've put together a whole bunch of information around how to do this if you would like to transform your own eating, your own kitchen, so that it is sugar free, so that you don't have to be concerned about whether you're eating those sweet treats or not. And this is called Sugar Freedom. It's a workshop that's happening on February 11th. I'm going to share with you what all the alternative healthful sweeteners are, how you can tell the difference between which ones are actually healthy and which ones are not, how to use them, best practices for ensuring that the texture is right and the taste is right, and if there's any special prep you need to do, and also what I call a cheat sheet of how to convert basically any recipe to be sugar free, so that you don't even have to think about it. You can opt for a chart where you'll be able to see what you need to change and how you need to use it. So if that sounds interesting to you and you'd like to join me, I would love to see you there. It's next Thursday, February 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern. There will be a replay if you can't make it live, and I'll ask you to submit any questions you have so that I can answer them live. There'll be a Q&A at the end. Would love to see you there. You can just go to rickiheller.com/SF workshop. SF stands for sugar free SF workshop, and get all the details, and you can register there if you want to join us. So hope to see you there. If you have any questions about what I talked about today, please do leave them in the comments below. I always come back and read them. Would love to hear your thoughts. Would love to know if this is something that you have dealt with in terms of trying to be more moderate in your eating and possibly not being able to, or if you've mastered that. I'd love to know how you did that as well. All right, everybody, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon.